Okay, so let's get on to the next part of the lion, the next body part to draw. We've just finished doing a little tutorial on how to draw the head, and I covered doing the front view, the side view, the 3/4 view. We covered doing the mane. Well, let's talk about doing the legs. I want to go through each part of the lion, and then we're gonna put it all together and draw the whole body. But the legs, they all have their very specific ways they're put together. The cool thing that we're going to find as we go through all of these tutorials, all of these animal lessons, is that all of the animals that we're going to be drawing, mammals especially, they all have the same body parts. We all have the same body parts. We're all kind of basically built the same. We just are put together in different proportions for different functions and that sort of thing. But you'll be able to see that the muscles in our arms and our chests and our bodies and our backs and all that, you can find corresponding muscles in lions, and I'm going to go through a little bit of that today. So let's go ahead and look at what I've prepared. I've just worked out like I said, the legs, and so what I've got on the left side is the front view of the lion, and the way you're going to look, and there's something very specific there that I'm going to go over with you, and you can see in those forearms on the lion the way the bones cross over each other, and that really shows itself. It comes through in the flesh. And then on the right side, we're going to talk about that front right paw, or leg. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to go over the muscle structure in there. Lions obviously have very pronounced muscles, especially wild lions that have to really work for their meals. And we're going to see that there's a lot of similarities in their muscle structure and ours. And then finally on that rear right leg, on the back leg, we'll go over the structure there. So let's just go ahead and start right in the middle. Let's start with that front right leg. I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to create a layer on top. I'm going to knock that opacity down. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to knock that opacity down like I did with the lion heads. Let's turn that off too. There we go. And let's just get right into it. So the first thing is, the lion, here, they've got a shoulder right here. They have a shoulder blade right there, just like we do. We have our shoulder blade. The thing about four-legged animals, though, is that the rib cage, where our rib cage is wide and not very deep, we're wide. If a lion stood on its hind legs, you'd see that they're deep, that their chest has become stretched, this way. And so that shoulder blade has kind of shifted down to the sides, and that enables them to walk on four legs. The other thing too is that those shoulder blades, and the same with ours, they're not attached to the body. They're not attached to any other part of bone. It's all through tendons and muscle. But I'm just going to start drawing in here. So, we've got the head. Actually, I'm going to drop this down just a little lower so we can so I have a little bit of room up on top. I'll just get rid of that and start over again. So here, this is going to be all muscle on top of all of this, all of the bone structure right here, the spinal column. And then this will go into the head like we talked about earlier. Okay? So what we've got here is you're going to have this here. One of the things I want to stress is that when you're drawing lions or animals or anything like that, I'm starting with the bones and showing you how everything's built. But really, you know what? You don't need to know specific muscles. I don't know all the different names of the bones and the muscles and everything else, but I do pay attention to the muscle groups, and that's what I want to talk about today. So right here, here's the shoulder. Just like we have a shoulder, except that shoulder, rather than like us, we have the shoulder on the sides. Those shoulders have moved around through evolution, and they're kind of compressed and down the front. So as a result, lions don't have a very big pectoral muscle like we do, but they have very strong shoulder muscles. So let's bring this down, and you're going to see right here. Let me knock that opacity down even more, because I'm going to draw right over the top of this. Now, one of the things we're going to see is that here's the wrist. Now, the thing about cats is that they're digipeds. They stand on they have the same bones in their paws as we have in our hands. But when they stand, let's say that my arm here is the ground, they stand like this. So their paws are like this. And they actually have their thumb, just like my thumb is like this, they have a claw up off the ground like that. So they're standing like that. And they actually have a big fat pad underneath their paws where those toes can sit on. And I'll show you that in a second. But just like we have a break in our wrist right here, and our wrist is very, very flexible, so is the wrist of a cat. And I'm just going to draw the silhouette and blow this up a little better for you so you can see it a little better. And I'll get into the individual toes in a second, but right now I'm just drawing silhouette. Now you can see this very pronounced elbow, and that is going to be very pronounced on the cat as well. So we come up here, like that, and there's muscle in here. Looks like there's muscle there. And then you can see this little bone sticking out. Well, that's actually, there's a little pad, little toe piece that comes off of there. That sticks out the back. And if you look at the cat, if I draw the cat's paw from behind, so here we are looking at the cat's paw from behind, like so. All right, and the fur is coming down like so. Right here, you'd see a little toe, a little pad sticking up there. And if this is the inside, there's actually a little bit right there. Okay? I'll go ahead and erase that. Get it out of the way. So we're going to get these toes drawn in. Actually, I want to pull that back in because the toenails are the claws are retracted here. And then here, see how there's a slight flare out right there? There's a thin part to the wrist right here, and then it flares out. And you'll see that the toes are shaped sort of like this. There's a little ridge, because you can see with the bone comes down, and then it goes into the claw like so. And so the toe will mimic that, and they're going to have the little slit for the nail, for the claw. And it comes around like so. See that? And those on the middle toes, the slits for the claws are very close together. So if you looked at it from the front, you'd have the wrist, and it flares out. And we will look at it from the front and on the other drawing, but I just want to show you real quick. And here you got the other claw. So like so. So if you had that paw, you'd have your nail, the sheath for the nails are in tight like so. They're not in the middle, they're in tight like that. Then you'd have little tendons. You have a little bit of the bone structure showing through the skin, and kind of the bones coming through like that. Okay? So there's your paw there. So I'm going to continue drawing on here. So this is basically the silhouette. So I'm going to knock this back even more. Knock it way back, these bones. And I'm going to go ahead and start indicating some of these muscles. So I'm just going to grab a little dark red. Why not? Because we're talking about muscle. So the first thing to think about, I want to really get into here, because that's where you're going to see a lot of muscle, right up in the shoulder area of the cat. And this whole thing, that whole bit is an arm just like we have an arm. So if you look at the shoulder and this upper arm, from the elbow up, that's the same as here, and it's got all the same muscles. It's got a bicep, and it really has some very accentuated triceps. And then if you look in the forearm right here, those forearms are just like ours. They have all the same muscles. So if you look at, right here, on all of us, we have a bulge of muscle right here on our forearm. Well, cats have the same thing. And so I'm going to go ahead and start indicating some of that. So here, just like we have on the back of our arms, attached in this area, we have this tricep that comes down and attaches like so. We have another one, just like we have two heads to the tricep that come down and they attach right here on this bone. Okay? And then up in here is where all this muscle starts for the deltoid, your shoulder. That's what all of this is right here. And then this forearm muscle starts to feed right into here. So you get a lot of bulge right there and the forearm muscle coming down. And I'll color this in so you can see it a little better. Then off of this ridge, see that ridge right there on the scapula? Well, that ridge is there for muscle to attach to on either side, just like the ridge on the crest of the skull. Remember, I was talking about how the jaw muscles attach there. Well, there's muscles that attach to this ridge here. So you've got muscle that attaches this way. So it all goes this way, attaching to that piece right there. Then you've got muscle that attaches to the neck right there, attaches like that. And then we have some that comes down. And all this shoulder muscle, just like our shoulder muscle, feeds right into our bicep. Let me knock that opacity up. There we go. Just like it feeds into our bicep, this feeds in to this bicep. It's a very short bicep that goes into the shoulder, but there it is. So here on the lion, you tend to have a very pronounced area right here, and then right up in here, you can really see it on the cat. And then right along in here, you'll have skin that wrinkles up. And then right along here, along the rib cage, you're going to have latissimus muscle. Just like we have on the side of our body, like when you can tell when someone does a pull-up and they get really strong, wide muscles, this is the same muscle. All muscles are meant, if you understand the physics of muscles, a muscle is there to contract. So if I'm moving my arm this way, that means I have a muscle that's contracting and pulling it. Therefore, I have a bicep. That's the use of the bicep. So if my bicep contracts, it pulls my arm in. Now, people that can lift lots of weight, they push the weight up like that. If you're really strong, you're going to see someone has very large triceps, the back of the arm. Why? Because as the arm is pushing up, what's it doing? This muscle here has to contract and therefore pull this part of the arm around. It's contracting and pulling it around. So when you think about any kind of movement, if I move my arm back, there's a muscle in my back that's contracting, pulling my muscle back. Okay, so that's basically all you need to think about. If a cat, or if you think about the movement of an animal, if you want it to be moving in a certain way, you got to realize that there's a muscle contracting, controlling that movement. And so that'll give you a little insight on where the muscles will lay. So just like with us, this cat will, when they go after prey and they have to pounce and they're pushing and whatever, they're going to have very strong tricep muscles, and they're going to have very, because they're holding on and pulling. When they grab on the prey, they're holding on and pulling tight. They're pulling the prey in tight. So in order to do that, they need to have extremely strong latissimus muscles right here, latissimus dorsi. Okay, the part sits on the ribs right there. That needs to be very, very strong so that they can pull in, because as I pull in this way, I've got muscle right here that's doing that. That's doing that job. Okay? So let's finish off some of these muscles here. And this feeds into tendons that you won't really see under the skin. So basically, I just want to show you what you're going to see under the skin. So if I put a little, let's brighten that up. So here, as I color this in, cover up the bone structure, you can see a little better how these muscles work, like so. So now we're covering up those bones, and you can see how those muscles work. So if let's just take it a little further. So if we're lighting this, this would come into shadow right in here. If we have light coming from this direction, you'd have shadow here, you'd have a little shadow here, definitely some shadow right here, and then all this would be in shadow. Let me put this up here and set that to multiply. There we go. There. Like so. And put this back up on top. There we go. All right. I'm just going to redefine some of these lines just a little bit more so you can see where I'm talking about. So that comes in there. You got a little bit of muscle coming in here that attaches. Okay. Now let's go ahead just real quickly once again, just so you can see it a little better. If I were to add a little bit of highlight to this, we'd have a little highlight here. Coming down here, this would be catching light. We'd have light along this side, a little light there. Definitely along there and up in here. Okay? So, now that muscle is on there, let's go ahead. There we go. Let's go ahead. And now that I've added the shadow, well actually, yeah, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and add the fur. So if we had fur shapes, fur color in here, let's knock that up. There we go. I'm going to put this on top. If I cover this up with the fur, you can see how those shadows will come through. So it's not quite as defined. Obviously you're not seeing when the fur is on the cat. It's not an anatomy lesson, but you're still going to see some of those muscles through that fur. And so these are the highlights that you're going to see. Now I'm going to re-emphasize some of those shadows just a little bit. So I'm going to knock that fur back just so I can see underneath. There we go. We'll knock that size down. And once again, I'm going to add just a little bit of shadow right here. Add some shadow in here, shadow here. Now remember, I've been thinking about where those muscles attach, those muscle groups. Let's get some shadow in here. Nice strong shadow there. Their elbows can sometimes be hairless and a little dark, you know. There. Now if I knock that opacity back up, you can see now we're getting that's what you see on the outside of the lion. Now you can understand how those muscles work underneath. So let's, if I add a layer on top and go a little darker, then in here we would have hair. this would get a little shaggier. And here you'd have, fur breaks and whatnot. And then on lions, lions do tend to have, when they're young, they're very spotted. And as they get older, those spots fade. But you'll still be able to see just a little bit on some of them. So that would be very faint. And some of them are, they show through in varying degrees. In there. So that's the muscle and skin. Now you can see how the flesh and the muscle creates what we see on the outside, sitting right over that bone structure. Okay? There it is. Let's look at it from the front. So we'll do this from the front. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over so we can see a little better. And this one's interesting. I'm going to, once again, just like I did on the last one, I'm going to knock the opacity way down. Because one of the things, just like in our arm, you see how those bones in the forearm, how they twist. How, one starts on the outside and comes into the inside, and then, and vice versa. We have the same thing. If I sat there, with my arms down, you would see the same kind of twist in my arm. And so, what you'd see on the outside is this. There we go, we're normal. Let's bring this down. So, here we've got the outside of the cat. You got muscle. And this comes down here. So you've got that muscle. Remember we had that, this is the shoulder. You've got all that shoulder muscle coming in. And then right off of here, just like our forearms, you're going to have a bulge of muscle that comes out, comes down. You've got a swelling in the wrist. And then it comes in. And then you've got the feet here. Now on the inside, you're going to have right off of there. And then you've got a swelling of muscle just like in our forearms. And then here, you've got this comes out off of this bone. And then you're going to have a toe there. Toe here, here, and there. Like so. See that? And you'll have actually a little bit of a, you can feel this form here. It kind of wraps around like so. And then this kind of feeds up into the chest. And there's muscle. There is a pectoralis muscle just like we have. And it kind of comes off like so. But this, right in here, this is going to be all fur. And it tends to be pretty shaggy fur coming off the neck. But I really wanted you to see this kind of twisting. So if I draw this real bold, you get this twisting of the arm. You get, this with the arm. Like so. You see this part comes around. If I drew a human arm like so, like this, and here's the bicep coming down, the upper arm here. We have the same kind of thing where this comes down and then it goes into, it twists around like so. And you've got the hand like so. You've got that muscle, same muscle there, bicep comes up into here, into the shoulder. There, you see that? So, there you go. So that's the cat's forearm from the front view. And if you I'm going to go ahead and erase this arm because I want to show you. If you were to pick this arm up, let's say he picks it up. And you're seeing it foreshortened. You're going to see the wrist kind of break here. And the paw comes down like so. And then there's meat right here. Just like that. Here it is there. There it is coming towards us. See there? Like so. So you can see as that arm comes up, you've got this strong muscle that attaches to that bone, and then the strong meat underneath. Okay. So I'm not gonna paint over this like I did with the other ones because you kind of did it on that, and so you get the sense. And if we draw those nails or the claws right in there, you can see that's where it attaches. Okay. Like so. You got that? Good. Let's go on to the back leg. So, I'm going to move this over here. Just like the other ones, I'm going to knock that opacity down. Create a layer on top. And I'm going to make my brush just a little smaller. So, here we've got the pelvis. There's the hip right there. And that's always going to be very pronounced. When we get into drawing the body of the cat, well, I'll point this out because that's going to be for me, it's an anchor point when drawing the cat. Those hips, those hips are vital. So here you've got this comes down, and with the tail, it tends to kind of hang off the butt right there. That pelvis comes down. And what a lot of people don't realize is that leg bone is further back. So you've got the body. It comes in here. And right off the knee, there's this flap of skin that connects to the body. But the actual muscle comes off the hip right here, comes down, and comes off the knee. But you've got this flap of skin kind of forms this triangle that attaches to the body. All right? And then here we've got a lot of muscle that comes down. The cats need to spring, they need to explode, they need to push, and so they have very, very powerful back legs. That thigh is just like our thigh. Once again, it's all the same muscles, just proportioned differently. So this comes down, connects all right into here. It's going to come around, those muscles will connect right in like that. So that, remember I was talking about contracting. As this muscle contracts, what happens? It's going to pull that ankle, that foot right up into the air. The other thing I want to point out as we get into this back leg, notice the back foot. See the heel there? What are they doing? They're standing on their toes. Just like on the front feet, they're standing on their fingers like we would stand on our fingers. That's the heel. That's, that foot is just like our foot, except they don't walk on their heels. They walk on their toes. So that's what that is right there. So then here you'd have the calf muscle that comes down, and you've got very, very strong tendon. That's a little under accentuated. Let me bring this around. You've got an extremely strong tendon that comes up, and that's why you can see, if you look at your dog, because dogs have the same thing, there's that little hollow behind the tendon, and if you grab your own foot, you can feel that tendon behind your heel. Well, this is the same thing, except their tendon is extremely strong, so that they can get that springing power. If you notice, this distance between here and here is short compared to the rest of the leg, and so that when they spring, when that pushes off, that gives them even more explosive power. All right, so this comes down. You've got a little break right here, and it comes into the foot. Now here you've got see that kneecap under there. So what happens is when you see the cat's leg, there tends to be a little bit of a double break right there. There's like a double. There's the kneecap, and then you've got the space between the kneecap and the lower part of the leg, and then it comes down with a little muscle. It feeds right into the foot. So now you can see how that foot, now that you know the bones underneath there, you can see how that comes together. And there's the toes coming in. And then there's an ankle right here, and you can see that ankle coming up on the cat as well, with that bone. That bone sticks out, there's an ankle, just like we have. And there's that hollow that happens right in here. Now this muscle right in here is very, very strong. And you'll see a lot of definition along here as it comes in. But right along here, you've got the bone right here, and this muscle attaches all along in there, like so. Now this in here, you've got muscle that comes in. There's a lot of strong quad muscle right in there. But this tends to there's not a lot of, there's some gut and stuff like that. There's no bones in here. So what happens underneath the hip is wide. This is a big hollow area. It goes into shadow. So we'll draw this tail coming down. So you see, and this is another thing to think about when drawing the back leg. Some people have a hard time with the proportions, especially, when the leg is bending. I learned a trick a long time ago when I was working with an animator named Glenn Keane. If any of you animators out there are into animation, you'd know who Glenn Keane is. He was the designer of the Little Mermaid and Beast from Beauty and the Beast. Well, he was my mentor when I was learning animation. And years ago, when I was very young, I was still a kid, I brought one of my drawings to him, and I was having some problems with the back leg of this animal. And he explained something to me, because he was just finishing up, he was doing some animation from Oliver and Company. So that'll tell you how long ago it was. And they were doing some dog animation, and he made a discovery. If you look at the bones on a dog, or on the back leg, we'll look at the cat here. Here I've got the bone coming off the leg here, and then it comes here, then we've got the ankle, and it comes into the foot. If you look at this line and this line, if I drew them out, they're what? They're parallel. And now in nature, they're not always parallel. But for me, for a rule of thumb, I try to keep them parallel, so it just tends to look right. And so what I mean is, if I decide I want to bend the leg, so here's the pelvis, the leg bends. And they also, these 2 points right here, if you look here and there, they tend to be equidistant. See, they're kind of the same length. So that's another thing to think about. So if I bend the leg like this, well, I'm going to keep that parallel. And look at that. So as I draw in the thigh, I have a foot or a leg that looks correct. And the same thing is if I want to stretch it out. If I want to stretch that leg out, I'm going to keep them parallel. Like so. You see that? So you can see, that's one way of thinking about the foot section and the thigh section. Keeping those lines parallel with each other will keep the drawing in place. We'll keep it, looking right. And so once again, if you look here, look at that line right there for the femur and this line for the foot, they're pretty parallel. And so it's just a little trick that I learned a long time ago, and I'm passing it on to you. So there's that leg. Then from behind or from the front, if you look at the leg, it's very thin on a lion. They've got a lot of muscle here. And once again, a male lion can have real big, certain male lions can have really big, strong legs, and other ones who haven't been eating as well might not have as robust a leg. But if I draw them from behind, here's the tail coming down. One thing is, let's draw those heels. The heels come in, their toes will tend to stick out, like so. Okay? But you got basically straight here, and then you get, and there's that hollow in the tendon. It's on the inside that you get the change. There we go. So it tends to look like that from behind. All this meat, there's the butt, the back of the thigh going up into the butt. Actually, four-legged animals don't have much of a butt. We have a butt to keep us standing upright. That butt attaches to our back and keeps us standing up. They don't need that, so they have strong back of their thigh muscles, but they don't have much butt muscle. Like so, okay? So, those are the legs on a lion. I'm gonna, we'll talk more about them when we talk about the full body. So I just wanted to talk about the anatomy and just get you guys going on those different parts. One of those cool tricks is remember those parallel the bones, the foot, the lower part of the foot and that femur. When you're bending the leg, stretching the leg, if you keep them parallel with each other, it tends to keep the leg in the right proportion. Not to say that, sometimes that foot can move on its own, but it's a nice little rule to keep in mind. So anyway, those are the legs. Why don't we move on to the next body part?